Welcome to i4 Institute. I am Khushbu, working as .NET software developer in i4 Technology Private Limited. This series is about .NET framework. In last session, I discussed about LinkU. In this session, I am going to talk about MVC. In this session, I am going to cover the following points: introduction to MVC, MVC versus web forms, architecture of MVC, routing, bundling, filter, custom filter, actions, action result, action parameters, action selection, action filters, razor, layout, view and layout, HTML helpers in MVC, partial view, areas, MVC state management. Now, first of all, introduction to MVC. So what is MVC? MVC stands for Model View Controller. It is a software design pattern for developing web applications. Software architecture pattern which separates the representation of information from the user interaction with it. Here M stands for model, V stands for view and C stands for controller. ASP.NET MVC helps to develop powerful and pattern-based dynamic website that enables a clean separation of concerns and also give full control on markup. So it will just differentiate view user level and controller level. That is business logic. Also, it includes many features that help to develop a sophisticated and modern web application. Now, what is the advantage of MVC over web forms? So here is a comparison between MVC and web forms. You can see here in MVC it is easier to manage complexity. In web forms it preserves states over HTTP. In MVC it does not use view state or server based form. Web forms use page controller pattern. In MVC there is a rich routing structure, but in web forms it is a view state or a server based form. In MVC it supports for test driven development. In web forms it works well for small teams. In MVC it supports a large team well, but in a web form development is less complex. Now let's see the architecture of MVC. A model view controller pattern is made up of following three parts, that is a model, view and controller. Here you can see there is a basic structure of architecture of MVC. Here is a model which have a bit database entities, then view and then controller. View controller is bridge between a model and view. Now, what is the work of model? Let me describe you in detail. It is responsible for managing the data of the application. It responds to the request from the view and it also responds to instruction from the controller to update itself. So here you can see controller is a bridge between a model and view. Lowest level pattern which is responsible for maintaining data. It represents the application code, for instance a list of database records. It is also called the domain layer. Model is also called as domain layer. Now next one is view. The view displays the data, that is database records. A view requests information from the model that it needs to generate an output representation. Presents data in a particular format like JSP, ASP and PHP. MVC is often seen in web applications where the view is the HTML page. Next one is controller. You can see the core part of MVC. It is a part of application that handles user interaction. Here again you can see controller behaves as a bridge between model and view. Typically controller reads the data from view, control user input, sends input data to the model. It handles the input, typically user actions, and may invoke changes on the model and view. Now, what is routing in MVC? So, a route is a URL pattern that is mapped to a handler. Route is nothing but a URL pattern. The handler can be a physical file such as an .aspx file in a web form application, and a handler can also be a class that processes the request such as controller in MVC application. The routing, I will show the example of routing in our example. At runtime, routing engine use the route table for matching the incoming request URL pattern against the URL pattern defined in the route table. So whenever you write your URL in your web browser, then on basis of routing, it will act. Register one or more URL patterns to the route table at application start evaluation. When the routing engine finds a match in the route table for the incoming request URL, it forwards the request to appropriate controller and action. If there is no match in the route table for incoming request URL, it turns a 404 HTTP status code. The status code for not matching the URL is HTTP 404. Now, how it works? So here you can see there is a diagram for a routing. You will give incoming request in routing engine. That incoming request will be passed in URL. Now what will happen? It will find the matching route in your route table. If the route will find, then it will process request. Otherwise, it will just generate HTTP 404 error. This is simple diagram for understanding a routing mechanism. Now, next is most important, that how to define route. Here you can see there is a method called register routes. It has a object of route collection class. Inside that route collection class, there is a method called map routes. So I am just initializing an object routes.maproute. In that I am giving first keyword, that is default, that is route name. Second one is URL with parameters, that is what kind of URL it should be. So here you can see controller action ID. So first of all, there should be a name of a controller. Then inside that controller, the action you want to call, and then if it has any parameter, then it should have a parameter. Similarly, for default, what controller or action should be called. So here you can see for default, it called home controller having a action index. And ID is equal to optional ID. If it has any, then it will bind, or else optional. So now you got how to define routes and register routes. But now how to initialize route. So in application start, you have to just call that method register routes route table.routes. It will by default call this method. Next one is bundling. So what is bundling? Bundling is nothing but it is a simple logical group of files that could be referenced by unique name and being loaded with one HTTP request. Bundling and minification reduces the number of HTTP requests and payload size, resulting in faster and better performing ASP.NET MVC websites. Now, how to define bundling? Here you can see there is a method called register bundles. In that there is a bundle collection class. I am just initializing object bundles dot add new script bundle. If it is a type of script, that is .js having a file extension .js, then it is a script bundle. Or if it has a .css type, then it is a style bundle. You have to just add your bundle name inside your script bundle. Then include all of your JS files, whatever JavaScript files you want to include in this bundle. Similarly, you can add bundle for your CSS files. Now, how to initialize this bundle? So in application start, you have to just write bundle config.register bundles bundle table.bundles. So ASP.NET MVC filter is a custom class where you can write custom logic to execute before or after an action method executes. Filters can be applied to an action method or controller in a declarative or programmatic way. MVC provides a different types of filters. That is authorization filter. It is used to perform authentication and authorizes before executing action method. It belongs to I authorization filter. Built-in filter are authorized and require HTTPs. Next one is action filters. It is used to perform some operations before and after an action method executes. It belongs to I action filter. Third one is result filters. It is used to perform some operations before or after the execution of view results. It belongs to I result filter. Built-in filter are output cage. Last one is exceptional filter. It is used to perform some operations if there is an unhandled exception thrown during the execution of ASP.NET MVC pipeline. It belongs to I exception filter. Built-in filter are handle error. Now filters can be applied at three levels, that is global level, controller level and action method level. So what is global level? Global filters will be applied to all the controller and action methods of an application. Here you can see there is an example of a global level filter application. Here you can see there is a public class MVC application which is inherit from system.web.http application. In that you can see there is a protected void application start method. In that you have to just write one line, that is filter config.register global filters.filter. It will directly apply this global filter to your application. Next one is controller level. Filters can also be applied to controller class. So filters will be applicable to all the action methods of that controller only. That controller class if it's applied to a controller class. Here you can see there is a home controller. I just given a handle error filter to that controller. So inside that every action methods like index. For example, here it is index. If it is a multiple action method, then this handle error filter is applied to each and every action methods in this home controller. Next one is action method level. That is apply filters to an individual action method. So filter will be applicable to that particular action method only. Here you can see I applied handle error filter to public action result index. So inside home controller only index will have this handle error filter. No other methods will be affected by this filter. Filters run in following order. First is authorization filter, then action filters, followed by response filter and exception filters. Next one is custom filters. You can create your custom filter as well. Create custom filter attribute by implementing an appropriate filter interface for which creates custom filter and also derives a filter attribute class. For example, implement IException filter and filter attribute class to create custom exception filter. In the same way, implement an IAuthorizations in filter interface and filter attribute class to create a custom authorization filter. Here is an example for custom filter. Here you can see my error handler. I just inheriting filter attribute and IException filter class. In that I am just overriding IException filter dot on exception method, and whatever logic I want to implement will be there. So what is action in MVC? Actions are ultimate request destination. The actions are public controller methods, non-static, no return value restriction. Action typically returns an action result. Here you can see an example. Now next one is action result. So what is action result? Action result is an abstract class. Controller action responds to a browser request. It inherits from the base action result class. There are different types of results. Here you can see content results. Framework behavior is returns a string literal and method is content. Next one is empty result. It have a no response. Next one is file content result, file path result or file stream result. It returns the contents of a file. Next one is HTTP unauthorized result. It returns an HTTP 403 status. JavaScript result a script to execute. JSON result returns a data in JSON format. Redirect result redirects the client to a new URL. Redirect to root result redirect to another actions or another controller's action. View result and partial view result. Response is the responsibility of a view engine. ASP.NET MVC maps the data from HTTP request to action parameters in few ways. That is, routing engine can pass parameters to action. For example, HTTP localhost users I4. Users is a controller name and I4 is an action name, action method name. Routing pattern is users username. URL query string can contains a parameter as well. For example, users by username $username equal to iPhone. This is another way. HTTP post data can also contain parameters. Here you can see an example. Next one is action selection. That is action name, that is string name. Accept verbs, HTTP post, HTTP get, HTTP delete, and HTTP options. Non-actions require HTTPs. Child action only, that is only for HTML.action. Here you can see an example. Here you can see there is action result login. First of all, action name should be a user login. So name of the action will be a user login, not login. What accept words is HTTP post. So whenever the HTTP post will fire, this action will be called. Requires HTTPs. So it will require HTTP. Next one is what is action filter. So ASP.NET MVC provides the following types of action filter. Authorization filter, which makes security decision about whether to execute an action method, such as performing authentication or validating properties of the request. It is mostly used for username and password authorization. The authorized attribute class is one example of an authorization filter. Action filter, which wraps the action method execution. Performs additional processing such as providing extra data to the action method, inspecting the return value, or cancelling execution of the action method. Result filter, which wraps the execution of action result object. This filter can perform additional processing of the result, such as modifying the HTTP response. The output cage attribute class is one example of a result filter. Exceptional filter, which executes if there is an unhandled exception thrown somewhere in action method, starting with the authorization filters and ending with execution of the result. Now next one is how to apply an action filter. An attribute that implements the abstract filter attribute class. Some action filters such as authorized attribute and handle error attribute implement the filter attribute class directly. These action filters are always called before the action method runs. Other action filters such as output cage attribute implement the abstract action filter attribute class, which enables the action filter to run either before or after the action method runs. Use the action filter attribute to mark any action, method, or controller. If the attribute marks a controller, the action filter applies to all action methods in that controller. The following example shows the default implementation of home controller class. In the example, the handle error attribute is used to mark the controller. Therefore, the filter applies to both action methods in controller. Here you can see an example for action filter. You can see here a home controller class. In the home controller class have an action filter handle error. So every methods in this class will affect by this handle error filter. Inside that there is a two method, that is public action result index and public action result about. Action result index have a no output cage class, but action result about have output cage duration equal to 10. That is, it have a filter output cage. So this about action result will affect by the output cage filter, but not in action result index. Now, what is razor? In MVC view engine, there is a two type of syntax. One is ASPX syntax and second one is razor syntax. So what is the difference between ASPX syntax and razor syntax? Razor is a template markup syntax. It is a simple syntax view engine based on C# programming language. Enables the programmer to use an HTML construction overflow. Code-focused templating approach with minimal transition between HTML and code. Razor syntax starts code block with @ character and does not require explicit closing of the code block. Here you can see one is ASPX syntax and second one is razor syntax. In ASPX syntax you have to start the code and you have to end the code. But in razor you have to just do @. So you can say razor is a lightweight view engine. It has a simple syntax view engine and it is based on C# programming language. Razor syntax. @ for values HTML encoded. Here is an example in paragraph tag. If I want a current time is, what will I do is @datetime.now. So it will behave as a C# programming language. Not HTML encoded code. You don't have to write @HTML raw and some variable. You don't have to store that in a some variable. You can directly access this. @ for code blocks keep the view simple. Here is another example. In your view, you can do @ braces open and close and inside that your logic. If else for each etc. have a C# statement can also be used in razor syntax. HTML markup lines can be included at any part. @ for plain text line to be rendered. Here is you can see another example inside a HTML div. What I want is according to condition I want to print the message. So what I will do by appending @ and my condition if model.products.count equal to 0, then it will go inside and print paragraph tag that is sorry no products found. But in else and if it has a count, then if it will do a else part, and in else part what will happen, list of products found. So what will happen, @ for each variable product in model.products, product name will be printed in a bold. Now next one is layout. So what is layout? It defines a common site template similar to ASP.NET master pages but better than it. Razor view engine renders content inside out. First view is rendered then layout. @ render body indicate whether we want the views based on this layout to fill in their core content at the location in the HTML. Here you can see an image where there is an HTML inside that in div body, id body, there is @ render body. So here whatever view have your HTML will be displayed inside this div id body. Next is view and layout. So view don't need to specify layout since their default layout is set in their view start file. That is views viewstart.cs HTML code for all the views. Each view can specify custom layout pages. Here you can see inside @ braces layout equal to path of your layout. Views without layout are layout equal to null. This is just a basics of an MVCs. Now let's create a demo application for MVC. So how to start with MVC? What you have to do is open your Visual Studio. Now go to File, New, File, New Project. Now here in C#, what you want to do is ASP.NET Web Application. I am just renaming the name MVC Application. Now I am clicking on OK. So it will ask me a template, that is empty, web form, MVC, web API, single page application, Azure or Azure mobile service. So what I want to do is I want to create an MVC application. So MVC. Now I'm clicking on OK. Now here you can see an MVC application is created. Here you can see in Solution Explorer there are some of the folders, that is App Start, Content, Controllers, Fonts, Models, Scripts and Views. Now let me start with App Start. In App Start there is a bundle config file. Here you can see public static void register bundle. That is the name of the method. In that there is a class, bundle collection class having object bundle. Now what is here is bundles.add. Here you can see the script bundle have, in this there is a script folder. In script folder there is a jQuery versions JS. So whatever jQuery here the version of the JS will be appended and all are bundled in this bundle jQuery. Similarly, there is a jQuery validate. Here you can see there is a few of the validate jQuery files. So it will be bundled in this another bundle. Similarly, modernizer, bootstrap response and bootstrap CSS and site. You can see here this is a script bundle and this is a style bundle. So styling files will be in a style bundle. So now I have created a bundle. Now I want to initialize this bundle. Here I created a bundle. Now I want to initialize this bundle. So in global.aspx page there is an application start. In application start here you can see what I have did bundle config.register bundle method. That is in this there is a method register bundle. I just initialized that method. So in this method any number of bundles are registered to this application. Now again there is a filter config class. Here you can see there is a filter config, that is filter.add new handle error attribute. So this is a global at a global level. Now I want to initialize this as well. So here you can see in global.aspx file there is initialization of filter config, that is global filters. Now next one is root config, mean. Here you can see there is a root defined in a root config. Here you can see by default it will have a home controller followed by action index and ID is a parameter. But the root of the URL should be in this manner. That is a controller name followed by the action name and if parameters if any. So this is a root for MVC for this MVC application. Now you can see here there is another folder, that is controller models and views. Let me show you a model. Here you can see there is an account view model. There is a public class external login confirmation view model. It has only a single parameter, that is public string email. Here you can see there is a required filter. So it is a global filter. It should be a required. So for this parameter email, this filter is applied. So this should not be empty. Now here you can see there is a display name. So email is a name of n parameter, but what I want to display is email only. Suppose I want to display something different than email, then I can write here only. So if you want to add your model, then what you have to do is right click on model, add new item, add class. rename your class and click on add. It will create a class in this folder and you can create your own model. Now, what are controllers? Here you can see there is a home controller. Inside a home controller, there is a three method, that is index method, about method and contact method. Three of them have a action result type. You can see here action result. Now in index I am returning a view. So what view it will return? Corresponding to this, in this controller action only view is written. So inside a view folder there is a home folder. Inside home there is an index. Same name as of the action method. You can here see there is the view. In this view there is an HTML. So this view will be displayed when home controller will call this method. Similarly, there is an about. If when this action will be called, then about view, that is this HTML will be printed. So this page, this view will be called. Similar for a contact. Now I want to add controller. Then how can I add a controller? Just right click on controller, add controller. Name of you have to choose, that is you want to choose an empty controller or read write actions using entity framework. There are options for this. Web API depends on your need. You have to choose the type, then add. It will add the controller in your controller folder. Suppose I want to add a view, then what you have to do is add on view or any of the folder you want to add a view. Right click on it, add view. It will add view to your folder. Now next one is, we have learnt about filters. So suppose I want to give a filter to this index method. Then what I have to do is, above this, what I will do is I will write square bracket. Suppose my filter is handle error filter. So handle error. It will apply handle error filter to this. Suppose I want to call this method when HTTP post. So what I have to do is again a square bracket HTTP post. So it will call when it have a HTTP post. In this way I can give a filter and post methods. Now let me run this application. I am running this application. You can see here by default it run home and index, because in root config we given default path is home controller and index method. Whatever I applied in bundle config, that is JavaScript and CSS, is also applied to this. Page in this application. Now suppose I want to call it directly from my URL. So what will I do? I'm just writing controller name home / about. So inside home controller there is about method, and about have a view. So it will just print this view. Now suppose I will write any of another name. For example, I'm just typing contact us, which is not in home controller. So what will happen? We'll throw an error, HTTP 4 error, that resource cannot be found. Suppose I am writing index, then it will again show me the same page, that is index page. So this is a basic application for creating a MVC. So this is a basic MVC application. Now let's return to HTTP helpers in MVC. With MVC, HTML helpers are much like traditional ASP.NET web form controls. Just like web form controls in ASP.NET, HTML helpers are used to modify HTML. But HTML helpers are more lightweight. Unlike web form controls, an HTML helper does not have an event model and a view state. In most cases, an HTML helper is just a method that returns a string. With MVC, you can create your own helpers or use the built-in HTML helpers. There are some of the HTML helpers in MVC are begin root form. It will return an internal object that represents an HTML form that the system uses to render the form tag. Next one is end form. End form, a void method, closes the pending hash form tag. Checkbox and checkbox for, that is input, returns the HTML string for a checkbox input element. Hidden and hidden for returns the HTML string for a hidden input element. Password form for returns the HTML string for a password input element. Radio button for returns the HTML string for a radio button input element. Text box for returns the HTML string for an input text element. Label for returns the HTML string for an HTML label element. Action link and root link returns the HTML string for an HTML link. Drop down list for returns the HTML string for a drop down list. List box area returns HTML string for a list box. Text area for return HTML string for text area. Partial returns the HTML string incorporated in specified user control. Render partial writes the HTML string incorporated in the specified user control to the output string. Validation message and validation message for returns the HTML string for a validation message. Validation summary returns the HTML string for a validation summary message. Now, what is partial view? Partial view renders a portion of a page. It reuses a pieces of view, HTML helpers, that is partial, render, partial and action. Here you can see there is an application, MVC first application model, and inside there is a for loop. In for loop there is a model. In for loop there is a object for a model. Partial view. Partial view renders a portion of a page. It reuses the piece of a view. HTML helpers are partial, render, partial and action. Here you can see inside a for loop there is a HTML.partial user profile, user. Now, what is user profile? User profile is a name of an partial view, and what I am passing is user model. So, in my user model view, there is in my user profile view there is a model named user model which supports this object user. Inside that, what I am doing is by accessing that model, I am just printing model.full name is model.age years old. So it will behave in such a way. Areas. Some application can have a large number of controllers. ASP.NET MVC let us partition web application into smaller unit areas. An area is effectively an MVC structure inside an MVC application. Example, large e-commerce application. Main store, users, blog, forum, administration. Here you can see inside areas you can differentiate your areas in accordance with your user level. Next one is MVC state management. It is a process by which developer can maintain a state and a page information over multiple requests from same or different pages in web application. Methods which are used in ASP.NET MVC application are hidden fill, cookies, query strings, view data, view bag, TimeData. Now, what is hidden fill? It is used to store small amount of data on the client system. It is preferable way when a variable's value is changed frequently. The only constraint on hidden field is that it will keep the information when HTTP post is being done. It will not work with HTTP GET. For example, to store in hidden field in MVC view page like, you have to use this HTML hidden for. It will store ID in your hidden field. Next one is cookie, small text file which is created by server and stored on the client hard disk by the browser. It does not use server memory. Generally, a cookie is used to identify users. When user sends a request to the server creates a cookie and attaches a header and sends it back to the user along with the response. The browser accepts the cookie and stores it on a client machine either permanently or temporarily. The next time the user makes a request for the same site, the browser checks the existence of a cookie for that site in the folder. Cookies are of two types, that is persistent. Cookies are permanently stored till the time we set, and non-persistent. Cookies are not permanently stored on the user system. When user closes the browser, the cookie will be discarded. Here is an example for a persistent cookie and non-persistent cookie. Note the number of cookies allowed varies according to the browser. Most browsers allow 20 cookies per server in a client hard disk folder, and size of cookies not more than 4 KB of data. Query strings, string variable which is appended to the end of the page URL, used to send data across pages, store information in a key value pair. A question mark signature is used to append the key and value to the page URL. For example, here you can see I pass the query string value along with a root parameter ID like name equal to mobile. Here you can see there is an action result added. So ID will have 1 and name will have a value mobile. Note, most browsers impose a limit of 255 characters on URL length. We should encrypt query values. View data. Mostly MVC use this view data, view bag and TimeData. So what is view data? It is a dictionary object which is derived from view data dictionary class. It will be accessible using a string as keys. For example, you can write view data inside a square bracket in a string. You have to write your value. It lies only during the current request from the controller to respective view. If redirection occurs, then its value becomes none. It requires typecasting for getting data on a view. Typecasting is necessary for view data. For example, bool is permission. You have to do a typecasting for using bool variable. Next one is view bag, dynamic property which is wrapped around the view data object. Dynamic property is a new feature in ASP.NET Dynamic language. We can simply set properties on the dynamic view bag property within controller. Here you can see an example. View bag does not require a typecasting. It also lies only during the current request from controller to respective view as view data. If redirection occurs, its value becomes null. It does not require typecasting for getting data on the view. You can see here is an example. Note, both view data and view bag are almost similar and helps to maintain data. They provide a way to communicate between a controllers and views. Now, what are the similarities between view bag and view data? It helps to maintain a data during movement from controller to view. It used to pass data from controller to corresponding view. Short life means value become null when redirection occurs. This is because their goal is to provide a way to communicate between a controller and view. It's a communication mechanism within a server call only. Now, what are the difference between a view bag and view data? View data is a dictionary of an object that is derived from view data dictionary class and accessible using a string as keys. View bag is a dynamic property that takes advantage of new dynamic feature in C# 4.0. View data requires a typecasting for complex data types and check for null values to avoid error. But viewback doesn't require typecasting for complex data type. Next one is TimeData. Dictionary object which stores the data is a key value parent derived from TimeData dictionary class. TimeData helps to maintain data when we move from one controller to other controller or from one action to other action. In other words, it helps to maintain data between redirects, that is HTTP post. Redirect to action has no impact over the TimeData until TimeData is read. Once TimeData is read, its value will be lost. Here you can see in action result test there is a TimeData.keep. So what will happen after us redirect? If I write a TimeData.keep, then it will not lose its data. This is a basic advantage. This is an important advantage of using TimeData. No TimeData.keep method is used to keep data in controller as long as you wish. Here you can see viewback.message. So message is the name of viewback. Your application description page from viewback. Now what I want is view data. It will behave similarly. View data in square bracket I am writing message 1, message 2 equal to about us page, about us page from view data. Now I am accessing this view. Now I am going to go to view. Here you can see I just initializes viewback.message and viewdata message 2. Now I'm running this application. Here you can see viewback.message is printed here and viewdata message 2 is printed here. So in this way you can communicate between a controller and view using a viewback and viewdata. So we learned a basic structure architecture of MVC, how to create an MVC application and how to use MVC action methods, how to use action filters and state management in MVC. So let's end this session. For references, you can go through tutorialpoints.com MVC, tutorialpoints.com ASP.NET MVC, Microsoft.com, tutorialsteacher.com. Let's end this session. Hopefully you enjoyed this session. Thank you for watching.